Vicki Fisher once again from the Lorraine Digital Academy. And today we're going to look at constructing a good 5-paragraph essay. And this is most helpful especially for students who are taking the English 2 end of course exam for English Language Arts. Even if you're not taking the English 2 end of course exam, I would still like you to watch the video anyway, especially if you have to create and write 5-paragraph essays, because in this video segment you'll get some good ideas on how to do that. So we're going to start with a sample question from a practice test for the end of course English 2 exam. And the reason why we're using this as our prompt today is because for the test you have to show evidence to support your thesis statement or your thesis idea for the essay that you will be writing. And so I wanted to show some good examples that they have from the practice test that will show you what a good paragraph looks like. In this case, these are expository essays that pluck evidence from the prompts that you are to read to make a good 5-paragraph essay. So in this example for question 20, again this is the example from the testing portal, and again a few videos back we navigated through the testing portal on the Ohio Department of Education's website. And again, I heartily recommend that all students who have to take any end of course exam use that testing portal to practice the test and the kinds of test questions that will be asked of you before you actually take the exam. So here's the practice essay question for English 2, and it says that you have to construct a multi-paragraph written response in which you examine how the development of the characters of Androcles, the Emperor, and the Lion helps advance the plot in each passage. Explain how this development is similar and how it is different in each passage. Your response must be based on ideas and information that can be found in the sources. So, they suggest that you manage your time carefully so that you can review the sources, plan your responses, write a thorough response, and revise and edit your response. Be sure to include an introduction, use evidence from the source to support your explanation, and include a conclusion. So we're going to take a look at how you can begin to tackle this kind of expository writing. And again, what you need to do is pretty much explain to you in the directions. So we've taken two versions of the stories of Androcles and the Lion. One is the pretty famous version from Aesop's Fables of Androcles and the Lion. The other passage in the sample from the portal comes from George Bernard Shaw and his play Androcles and the Lion. So here's the same story, but written in two very different ways, and the characters and the plots are also presented in two very different ways. So this is why in this case you're going to explain how the development of these main characters, Androcles, the Emperor, and the Lion, are similar and how they're different in each passage, either from Aesop's version or either from George Bernard Shaw's version. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next slide, and this might be a little difficult to see, but I will tell you again, this is also available through that testing portal. So again, all the information, or most of the information we're looking at today, you can access from the State Department of Education's testing portal. So you might be asking yourself, well, how do I get the most points possible that I can get on this 5-paragraph essay? They have a rubric that you can access that tells you how you can gain the most points possible. So we look at two major components of the essay. One is your purpose, focus, and organization. So how well do you have your thoughts organized? Do you have a good introductory paragraph? Do you have three strong supporting paragraphs in the body? And do you have a good concluding paragraph? These are the components that would fall under the purpose, focus, and organization to get the maximum of those 4 points. Your paragraphs have to be logical in progression. You need to be skillful in your use of transitional sentences and paragraphs. And again, you have a strongly maintained or controlling idea. So please make sure you look at this rubric, and then when you look back at your own, it follows it. The other important item, which I told you about, is plucking that evidence, citing the evidence, writing the evidence from the sources. They will be looking, the people who score your essay will be looking for this information. They will be looking for quotes that you lifted from the sources that you read to support your essay. So again, please bear that in mind. And I'm going to show you again a good 10-point essay, and you'll see how many times that person took information from the sources to garner those full amount of points. And then you get 2 points for conventions of standard English. So if you are properly capitalizing words, using proper punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, all of that good stuff, that will get you the 2 extra points. And that can help. Definitely it can help your score. Because perhaps if you're not a 4 and a 4, but a 3 and a 3, you can still get those 2 points for using proper capitalization and punctuation and spelling. And that can definitely help your score in the long run. So let's move on. So now I know I have to write about the differences and similarities of these 3 characters from Aesop's version of Androcles and the Lion and George Bernard Shaw's version of Androcles and the Lion. So I'm going back to my wheels and my spokes, and again, this is formula writing from Jan Cosner. Jan Cosner did a whole program on different kinds of formula writing for short and extended responses, and she wrote all kinds of books and other kinds of topics too for English. So again, this is a good visual and it helps me to keep my ideas organized, and I really recommend that you do some kind of pre-writing like this as you're taking that test, so you have your ideas in front of you that you can refer to as you are creating your 5-paragraph essay. So let's take a look. I have my introduction paragraph, and so again, we have to compare and contrast Aesop's and Shaw's versions of the Lion, of Androcles and the Lion. So the main idea about both versions of the story is about power. Who has the power? We also want to look about conflicts in the plots and this character development of all 3 main characters, Androcles, the Lion, and the Emperor. So in the first body, or the first paragraph of the body, I'm going to start with the lion and talking about the lion, citing evidence from the lion. And so I know that the lion is assumed to be fierce in both versions, but he's kind to Androcles, but he's fierce to the emperor. These are three main things that I remember about the lion. In my third paragraph, I'm going to talk about then Androcles. And at first, Androcles is very fearful of the lion, but then he becomes courageous. And courageous because he plucks that thorn out of the lion's paw. And in Shaw's version, Androcles, who is a servant and intimidated by the emperor, actually becomes wise and very confident. So I would make sure that I would include that in my writing. Finally, I'm going to talk about that emperor. And the emperor is an important, powerful figure in Aesop's version, but he is weak in Bernard Shaw's version, in George Bernard Shaw's version. So here's my comparison right here. Powerful in one, weak in another. And in Shaw's version of the story, again, Androcles ends up having the power over the emperor. So a very interesting turn of events. And finally, in my conclusion, I'm going to recap the two versions of Aesop's and George Bernard Shaw's play. So again, the characters and the plots are quite different. We talk about the lion's power in both, but then this power has a different impact depending upon which version you read. In Aesop's, power has the ability to be forgiving, but in George Bernard Shaw's version, it takes an unexpected form. So, with this in mind, with all of this information, now I'm going to show you a wonderful expository essay that talks about this comparison and contrast of the two versions of of Androcles and the lion, and what that looks like to garner the full 10 points. And as you look at this sample, I have highlighted in yellow the number of times that this writer has taken evidence straight from both sources, either Aesop's version or Shaw's version. And again, this is what helped this person to obtain the maximum number of points on that rubric. So let's take a look at that first paragraph. This is where we have to be strong in our introduction and talk about what it is we're going to be writing about. So we'll begin with paragraph 1, the introduction. The story of Androcles and the lion is essentially a story about expectations surrounding power and who has it. That is a beautiful beginning main idea sentence. Who has the power? And expectations surrounding power. In both Aesop's original and Shaw's reimagining, the assumption is that the lion will be fierce and unforgiving in his brute power. The conflict in the plots is centered on how the characters deal with that assumption. A sub-element to this power play is how each character is developed in each passage. The lion, Androcles, and the emperor relate to one another based on their own strengths and weaknesses and the reader's expectations of those roles. So clearly we know that he's going to be talking about these three main characters and about their strengths and weaknesses and about this conflict that again that is centered and deals with this assumption about the lion's brute power. While all the characters propel the plots in each version, the lion's character is at the center of each story. In both passages, he is expected to be fierce and violent towards humans, though Shaw's lion is the only one who actually acts fiercely. In Aesop's version, the reader can infer that the lion is normally fierce based on Androcles' reaction when he first sees the beast. Though weary, Androcles rose up and rushed away from the lion. So here's the first piece of evidence that we take from the version of Aesop's, and now we're incorporating it into our essay. However, the lion turns out to be weak, if only from injuring, moaning and groaning at first, and then fawning on Androcles later, instead of being the cruel beast he is expected to be. Similarly, the lion in Shaw's version is expected to be fierce and powerful. This power is shown by Androcles' words, "I wonder why they all run away from us like that." So again, now the writer is pulling evidence from Shaw's version. Do you see that? So now we have evidence from Aesop's passage and from Shaw's passage. The difference in this version is that the lion is fierce, chasing the emperor, roaring, and getting hold of the tailing end of his robe. Thus, this lion is clearly powerful, whereas the lion in passage 1 is just assumed to be so. Either way, the actions or inactions of the lion drive the plot, especially considering Androcles and the emperor's characters and reactions. So again, a nice mix and a nice incorporation of evidence in the first paragraph, comparing and contrasting the lion. On to the next paragraph. Androcles' relationship to the lion's power is very different in the two passages. So right away I know the writer is going to talk about Androcles and his relationship with that lion. In Aesop's version, Androcles is portrayed as fearful and at the mercy of the lion's power. He is in, quote, despair when he cannot continue to flee from the lion. His survival depends on the lion twice in this version. He plucks up the courage to help the lion, and that leads to the immediate affection of the lion. As a further result of Androcles' sudden courage, the lion surprises the reader and the emperor later when he makes, quote, no attempt to do Androcles any harm. However, in Shaw's version, Androcles is not at the mercy of the lion in the same way. The man's character is not one of weakness and fear, but one full of bravery and wisdom. Shaw's Androcles advises the emperor on how to interact with the lion, giving such advice as, "Don't run away, sir. He can't help springing if you run," and "Never be afraid of animals, your worship. That's the great secret." This Androcles seems never to have been afraid of the lion. In this version, the plot revolves around the emperor's fear and the lion's power rather than Androcles. So again, in the first part of the paragraph, we see a good amount of evidence from the Aesop version and a good amount of evidence from the Shaw version. And now remember, in our next paragraph in the body of our expository essay, we're going to talk about the emperor, again, citing evidence from both the Aesop version and the Shaw version. Therefore, examining the emperor's role reveals the last element of the power play in the plots of the stories. The depictions of the emperor in the two versions is very dissimilar. In Aesop's version, he is static, but important and powerful. His word commands that both Androcles and the lion be freed in the end. The interaction with Androcles seems brief. Quote, Androcles told the emperor all that had happened to him. Thereupon, the emperor pardoned Androcles. Shaw's emperor is far more dynamic and his relationship with the lion toys with the audience and expectations of who has power. The emperor says he is strong. I am not afraid of him. Yet the ruler's actions show that he is weak. The stage directions illustrate this. The emperor clutches Androcles, and the emperor dashes madly up the steps. Therefore, it is clear that Androcles and the lion hold the power in Shaw's version. It isn't until the emperor admits to their power that the lion is subdued. Right after calling Androcles a brute for daring to touch him, the emperor gives in to his fear and the lion and shows he likes the servant. The emperor says, quote, Mr. Androcles, my sweetest friend, my long-lost brother, come to my arms, in reaction to the lion's roar. Only then does the lion, quote, roll over on his back, leading Androcles to say, quote, you see, a child might play with him now. This shift in power proves that both the lion and the emperor are subdued. So again, look at all the highlighted quotes in yellow. Again, this writer has incorporated ample citations from both Aesop's and Shaw's versions to complete that portion of the essay. And finally, we have a neat and tidy concluding paragraph. In the end, the versions of the characters and plots in these two passages are quite distinct. Though the lion is a threatening force in each, he holds power differently in the two versions, one largely over Androcles and the other over the emperor. This difference in characterization and plot means that the readers understand power as forgiving in Aesop's original and as springing from an unexpected source in Shaw's drama. So, again, a very nice recap of the stories of Androcles and the lion from both versions. And so when it came time to scoring this student's essay, again, as I read it to you, as you saw for yourself, it was very well organized and focused, so that earned the student 4 points. The readers scoring this essay said this response earns full credit, 10 points. It is fully sustained and consistently focused within the purpose, audience, and task category, with effective organizational structure, earning the maximum 4 points in the assigned category. And then coming to evidence and elaboration, again, taking that evidence from the sources, again, the 4 points with this below. The response also earns the maximum 4 points for providing thorough, convincing, and credible support while citing evidence for the controlling idea. And finally, the writer earned the full 2 points for conventions of standard English. And the scores said, finally, this response earns the maximum 2 points for demonstrating an adequate command of basic conventions of standard English. So, this is the goal. This is the target to aim for in terms of your extended response, your 5-paragraph essay. Now, let's take a look at another essay on the same topic that was only an 8-point. And you'll see differences right away in this essay because, for one thing, it is shorter. It doesn't have as many areas with quotations from the sources, but nonetheless, it is written well enough that the writers gave it a score of 3 and 3 in its structure and formation, and a 3 for citing evidence, and a 2 for having good conventions of standard English. So even if your writing is not as fully expanded as that first piece of writing that we saw, you can still get an ample amount of points for your writing. I believe if you take your time and draft out your ideas and go back and pull the evidence out that you need to have to support your writing in a good 5-paragraph essay. And again, this is also available on the testing portal. You'll see it come right after that first essay that we looked at. And they have other examples of essays to students that maybe were scored at lesser points, maybe 6 points, maybe 5 points. But I don't even want you to think like that. I want you to think that you're going to write your best, that you know now, you have seen what makes excellent writing. And you can do it, I truly believe, once again, if you take your time, if you draft out your 5 paragraphs. And I hope you use the wheels and spokes because that makes such a good visual of what it is you want to remember to include or base the format or the structure of your writing. And again, you can see how important it is to cite the evidence to support your essay for your end of course exam. So this is it for our series of paragraphs. Remember, we started with simple sentences, and then we started with a good singular paragraph, and then we went to a 3-paragraph essay, and then now we are done and finished with a good 5-paragraph essay. So students, I wish you all the best of luck as the end of course exams are coming up really soon now, next week. My goodness, the year is just flying by. Take your time, organize your thoughts, cite your evidence, and you will do just fine. Thank you once again for watching. And again, this is Vicki Fisher with Lorraine Digital Academy. Have a great day.